Objectively speaking, Penn State is closer to a national title this season than Ohio State. And there's the possibility that these teams could meet not once, not twice, but 3 times.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State and Ohio State football. This is a Locked On crossover. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. That is Jay Stephens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, as we are breaking down, early breakdown for this Penn State-Ohio State matchup, but more importantly, who's closer to a national championship run? This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Friendly reminder, let us know your thoughts down in the comments section as we're talking about which team is closer to a national championship, early implications for this matchup, which teams have the strengths that will set them apart, including can Penn State even cover Jeremiah Smith? So Jay, the floor is yours. Is Penn State closer? What is the case for Ohio State to make another national title run and repeat back-to-back as champions?
I'll go with the case first and then compare the two teams second. Ohio State's case to even be a contender to go back-to-back for the first time in school history is getting the quarterback position correct. You're losing a lot of talent to the NFL, but you're also losing Will Howard, who was a very efficient quarterback a year ago, and not getting his position correct could lead to disaster for Ryan Day. Ryan Day has to get this correct. My early thoughts are that Julian Sain is going to be the starting quarterback for Ohio State. I know Ryan Day says it's a 2-horse race, or it's pretty much neck and neck. I know he's using all of those phrases to kind of make this thing as close as he can make it. My gut has always been Julian Sain. He's going to get the job at the end of the day, and that hasn't changed after spring practice in the spring game. He had better command over the offense. He had better command of the huddle. He looked like the sharper, the crisper quarterback over Lincoln Keenholz and even Tavian St. Clair, the true freshman. So Ryan has to get the quarterback position correct, but you have to also get things correct in the trenches. You lost your entire starting D-line from last year. You lost a lot of guys on the O-line to the NFL. The depth on the offensive line is one that I'm pretty solid with, pretty comfortable with the depth on the O-line. The D-line's a different question. The Buckeyes got to get that correct. One reason why Ohio State has won a lot of games over Penn State recently is because they've won the battle in the trenches. And if you don't get that correct right now, or even against Texas week 1 or some of the other Big Ten games, Ohio State will struggle against Penn State. They will struggle against Michigan because they're not getting one of the most important pieces of a team correct. When it comes to the national championship, comparing if Penn State's closer or Ohio State's closer, Penn State's the obvious choice right here to be closer to being a national champion in the upcoming season. James Franklin, for as odd as he is sometimes in big games, you bring in Jim Knowles from Ohio State, who was maybe the most sought-after defensive coordinator in the country. Yes, it recently came out the time of day that Knowles reached out to James Franklin, 5:06 a.m. That's a little odd to me. I wouldn't be calling nobody that early. But Knowles knew it was late in the process, and he had to. If he wanted to leave Ohio State, he had to make a move pretty quickly. James Franklin got the call, thought it was a little crazy, but next thing you know, he hired him. Great hire for James Franklin. You also have, at Penn State side, a lot of returning players that are not just guys that have been in the program for a while, but guys that are starters, guys that have been right there, really, really close. They were a Final Four team a year ago. They're really close. On the other side for Ohio State, you're losing a lot of talent that's being replaced with really good players that don't have the experience. Not just the quarterback, running back. You want to have 2 new guys new to Ohio State. Donaldson, a transfer, has been pretty good. On defense, losing 8 of your 11 starters. That's a lot of shoes to fill. Caleb Downs still there. Jeremiah Smith, like you mentioned, he is still there. The Buckeyes got talent. But right now, when we're talking right now, Zach, I have to give the nod to Penn State that Penn State is currently closer to being a national champion than Ohio State is in 2025.
Well, I appreciate that concession. So we agree on that. I do think Ohio State is a team that is built to peak at the right time. So the sooner the better. But Ohio State is not a team that is going to be polished in the first half of the season. They can be very dangerous in the second half, and that goes with the territory. You're breaking in a new starting quarterback. You're breaking in a new play caller in Brian Hartline. So, yeah, Penn State is going to be closer because Drew Allar, fourth-year veteran quarterback, third year starting consecutively at the same program, second year with the same offensive coordinator, so he's not learning a new offense, and he's meshed well with Andy Kotelnicki, and it's the supporting cast around him. You mentioned the battle in the trenches. Penn State returned 80% of its offensive line, and that was an offensive line that got better as the season went along. Against Ohio State, okay performance. They did fine. That was a close game. Yeah. They did as well as they could against Sawyer, Tuimoloau, and Williams, and the rest of that group. But that group comes back, the starting line for Penn State, and they got better. They manhandled Oregon in the Big Ten championship. I know they didn't win, but they still put up 37 points. They manhandled Oregon. They did well against SMU, which was a top 10 front seven. Objectively speaking, SMU's front seven was top 10 in the nation. Boise State was nothing to bat an eye at in terms of its front seven. And then against Notre Dame, they ran all over them. It still wasn't enough. So the offensive line, I didn't even get to the superstar tandem of Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. They didn't bring just one of them back. They brought both of them back. And okay, well, that's great. They have the offensive line. They have the running game. Drew Allar's a savvy veteran. But the wide receiver spot, that's an issue, right? Well, what went from a liability could now be not even a neutral, a net neutral, a strength. They went and upgraded the slot receiver position with Trevor Pena from Syracuse. They added Kyron Hudson from USC and Devontae Ross, who is a group of five transfer from Troy. Ross might be the best of the three, or at least have the best playmaking ability of the three with the way that he's going to be utilized within the offense. When I look at them, Ohio State and Penn State, and compare the two, it's the new look Ohio State defense. I don't really have a lot of questions or concerns about Ohio State's offense. I think the way that they're going to have to will their way to wins is through scoring 50, 60 points a game. They can do that with the nucleus that they have. Jeremiah Smith. It's Ohio State's defense that can they stop teams that are efficient on offense. Matt Patricia, no more Jim Knowles. So it's that kind of thing where Penn State very well might outscore Ohio State in a shootout type of game.
It's weird to even hear those word things come out of your mouth, Zach, but it's real.
Am I wrong?
You have to realize that, well, I mean, you got to score more points to win the game, but in a shootout, normally my gut is Ohio State. In every single game, I have faith that Ohio State, even with Kyle McCord, where Kyle McCord was the oddest quarterback under Ryan Day's time to start being the head coach, Kyle McCord could still win some shootouts against certain teams. He could do that. I think Sand is able to. I don't know for me, it's Sand's mentals and how does he handle the pressure. I don't know. You can have all the talent in the world. You can do some great things in high school, but being poised in the pocket in college when you have Denai Denton Sutton and other guys that Penn State has coming at you down after down after down, it's difficult. It's weird because Ohio State for one time is the team that has a lot more questions than answers. Where Penn State has a lot of answers right now when people are questioning, can they win this battle or can they get it right on offense or can they get it right in some defensive situations? That's Ohio State now. Not because of the talent they're losing. You got new voices, you got new coaches, you got moving parts. There's just a lot of stuff going on right now at Ohio State that is providing a lot of questions right now. And I'm glad it's happening right now at this point of the year. We're going to have these questions in October because I might be pulling my hair out. I don't have much hair, but my hair might be getting pulled out because I'm losing my mind about how odd the Buckeyes football team is.
The margin of error is razor thin because if anybody that's having this debate, it's Penn State's 1, 2, or 3 and Ohio State's 1, 2, or 3. It's not like, oh, Ohio State is a fringe top 10 team and Penn State's securely in the top 4 and you should assume that they're a semifinalist. No, it's a toss-up where some rankings have Penn State 1 and Ohio State 2 or 3, or vice versa. Ohio State's still number 1. They're the reigning champ and Penn State's 2 or 3. And then Texas is lodged in there somewhere. Maybe you have a random team like an LSU or a Clemson, that kind of. But it seems like the consensus top 3 is really Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State in some sort of order, which We threw it out there already, but there is a possibility that Penn State could play Ohio State 3 times in this upcoming season. Yeah, it's not impossible, and it might be likelier than people think. We'll explain why coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Now, Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. You'll get surprising insights. When I started using Monarch for myself, I realized just how much I was spending on dining out or groceries or package deliveries, you name it. Now I get to budget smarter and save more. You'll also get all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. You'll also get easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for, get this, 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. 3 times in one season. Now that would be something, but it is realistic. It's not just a fantasy. Penn State and Ohio State would obviously play in Columbus in the regular season. Right now, I would take Penn State to win this game at this present moment post-spring. But things could change, right? But on paper right now, I think Penn State would win that game. I think it's very possible that Penn State goes 12-0. I think it's possible that Ohio State goes 11-1, or what really matters is the conference record. So say they lose that game to Texas, but then the only other conference loss is to Penn State, hypothetically. They're, 8-1 in conference? Penn State's 9-0. And there's no more East and West, legends and leaders. There's none of that. It's the 2 best teams in the conference make the Big Ten championship game. Okay, well, there you go. Rematch in the Big Ten title. That's part 2. And then part 3, depending on how that goes and where they're on the college football playoff bracket, I don't know, maybe what? It was close, Jay, where Penn State was 3 points away, was honestly a 5-yard pass away from meeting Ohio State in a rematch in the college football playoff championship game. So it is not crazy to say that these 2 teams could meet 3 times next season.
No, it's not crazy. And that's kind of what I would expect to happen this year for some team. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to get 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten to meet the regular season, to meet in the Big Ten championship, and meet at some point in the playoff. Because the Big Ten has good enough teams to do that every single year. Yes, whoever loses in the conference championship game is still going to get into the playoff. So it's not like losing that game is going to bounce you out. The whole 14 playoff days are gone and they're never coming back. So I do think this is the year, Zach. And Ohio State fans were used to thinking that it'll be Ohio State and Michigan that would do that first. It'd be the first teams in the conference to do it 3 times in a row. And I don't know if the people in the South could handle Ohio State and Michigan in the playoff. Literally for the chance to win to move on, to have a shot to win the national championship. If people think the rivalry game is intense, wait till you see what happens in the playoff when those 2 teams are literally going blow for blow for a shot to win the national championship. For Ohio State, Penn State, it's one of the most physical games every year. So I don't know if the coaches would want that 3 times in a season. But if they're the best teams, give it to me. That's what we want to see. Yep. The 2 best teams in the conference battle it out for the right to be Big Ten champions. And then if they're 2 of the best teams in the conference or 2 of the best teams in the country, go ahead and do it in the playoff. I think ESPN would love it. I know Ohio State, Penn State fans might get annoyed by it. Some of them, I would love it. I would welcome it because you're beating the best. And if you can beat the best, go ahead and do that. And as much as I don't like playoff expansion, I welcome the opportunity for the best teams in the sport to play each other in the playoff. And so I would welcome it. I expect it to happen. And get your popcorn ready. That'll be a battle 3 times in a season.
Oh, yeah. I'd more than be okay with that. I would have no, because I do like when Penn State and Ohio State play for the sake of it's a challenge for Penn State. That's the mountain that they can't get past. So put that obstacle there. And if James Franklin does have a better team with what, at least right now, what we're assuming on paper, then go out and prove it and have that opportunity and not, well, you won the first time because Julian Sayin and Brian Hartline and everybody wasn't situated. The real test is when when the consequences are even bigger. There's no mulligan. You get a mulligan in both of these teams get a mulligan in the regular season. You can lose 2 games for the most part and still get into the playoff. We'll see what happens ultimately with the Big Ten title, right? There's Oregon's still going to be, a very good team. They're firmly in the top 10. We'll see if somebody breaks out. Is that in Illinois? Is that a Michigan? Does Indiana stay as relevant as they were a season ago? So it's not necessarily as cut and dry, but when I look at who's the top, I think it's Penn State and Ohio State are the top 2 teams. I can say that confidently. This is 1 and 2, no matter how you rank them. And then it's the rest of the Big Ten with somebody trying to prove that they're that third team. I get intel from Oregon that they're not as close as they would like to be this season. And then Illinois got a really tough schedule. Michigan's breaking in a true freshman quarterback, most likely. Is it Bryce Underwood? And so is that going to be an instant title contender? And then all of the stuff surrounding the scandal, allegedly. So I don't see anybody outside of Penn State and Ohio State for the Big Ten this season.
No, Oregon, you have to give Oregon their respect. I think USC could play spoiler. I don't believe Ohio State plays USC this year. I don't know if Penn State plays USC, but I do think USC is one of those teams. Let's say it's Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and let's say that USC does play spoiler. Well, that's what Lincoln Riley is trying to do, is spoil the party. Because right now, I don't even think in the season, they're going to be having a shot to be invited to the final 3 or 4 grouping to try to get there to the dance, which is the Big Ten championship game. But they got a lot of talent, and they have the ability to spoil some things. These 2 teams, Ohio State, Penn State, it's a slow roll right now because we're in May. It's going to get ramped up in the fall to meet in December in Indianapolis for the conference championship game. I wish this would have happened 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. I wish you could have gotten Ohio State and Penn State in the Big Ten championship game back then. I'm glad we're potentially going to get it now. And for Ryan Day, you've beaten Penn State every time you've played them. So I understand the physicality part. I understand the part of, want to save your guys. But also you got to make sure your guys are ramped up and ready for whoever you play in the Big Ten championship. Because Ryan Day doesn't want to have another year where you lose to Michigan and you're not winning the conference. Because people are going to continue to question, why does Ryan Day's team find a way to beat Penn State, but all of a sudden they lose to Michigan when sometimes Michigan's better, but Ohio State doesn't bring their A game, but they bring it against Penn State? Does he have his mind right in that game? I don't know. There's going to be a lot of questions and marks about Ryan Day. And let's just say Ohio State and Penn State meet in the Big Ten championship. And for argument's sake, let's say Penn State wins that game. That's a lot of negatives about Ryan Day if Ryan Day continues this abnormal flow that he had last year in the regular season with the expanded playoff. I hope it happens, Zach. I might actually go to that game if it happens. And I think the Buckeye players would welcome the challenge because they need that type of challenge at that time of year to stay up, to stay motivated. Yeah, it's football, but if you ain't playing ball, sometimes it's easy to sit back, relax, and let everybody else do the work.
Well, Ohio State still has Jeremiah Smith and Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate. They added Max Clare through the transfer portal. So that's why I don't worry about quarterback. You and I could play quarterback for the Buckeyes this season, Jay. And I think we do just fine with that group. So can Penn State even cover those wide receivers for the Buckeyes? I'm here to say, yes, they can. We'll tell you why on the other side of this break. Jay, I think you're going to have an easier time disagreeing here, and that's fine because Jeremiah Smith very well might be a number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft at some point in time. When I say that Penn State can cover these wide receivers, it's they can. Will they be able to take them out of the game entirely? Absolutely not. No, that's not what I'm trying to argue. So let me preface that. But Penn State at least has somebody that can relatively match up. AJ Harris could be a first round pick at cornerback for Penn State. He would cover Jeremiah Smith. I imagine that Jim Knowles would try to, man to man or do something schematically to match AJ Harris and Jeremiah Smith up if both are available, right? We're going with the starting depth chart that we would like to see for this game, through the later part of the season. Where I do think it is a little quiet, because I'm excited for that matchup. Where I do think it gets a little questionable is, okay, Davian Collins needs to prove himself. Now, he's somebody that is teetering on a breakout season for Penn State. Would he be that next guy that's opposite AJ Harris, and can he cover Carnell Tate or Brandon Inniss? Same thing with Elliott Washington. So Penn State actually has two co-breakout players waiting in the wings after AJ Harris. Are they capable of covering the second and third options? Zion Tracy is there as well in that group. King Mack transfers back to Penn State. He was at he was at Penn State, then he went to Alabama. Now he's back at Penn State as that slot corner. That's going to be a staple in Penn State's now 4-2-5 with Jim Knowles leading the way. So yes, they can keep up with the wide receivers, because I like the potential that this defensive back room has. But I imagine you're probably saying the same thing, that, well, with the potential that Tate and Inniss and Mylan Graham or Quincy Porter still have, does Penn State have enough options if Ohio State were to go 5 wide? And I don't know if that would be the case.
No, it wouldn't be the case. I don't see them doing that. I wish they would do that. I don't think there's a team in the country
Be smart.
that could guard Ohio State if they went 5 wide, or let's say they went 4 wide with Max Clare out there. That's still a matchup nightmare. 5 receivers or 4 receivers and a tight end. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a team in the country that can defend that. I truly don't. In regards to this conversation, though, about if Penn State has the goods to defend Ohio State's receivers, I don't think so at all. Mm-hmm. Now, I know, you can maybe slow them down. Can you slow them down? Can you stop them? That's a debate, and that's a play on words. I don't even think you can slow him down. It is not all about Jeremiah Smith. He's going to get the attention. He'll be double covered, and they'll be rolling coverage his side. I think the guy that's going to mess things up is Max Clare. Because in this conversation, we're talking about passing the aerial attack. If it's just the 3 guys on the outside, Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, and Jeremiah Smith, I still think there are matchup nightmares for Penn State's defenders in one-on-one coverage or any coverage Penn State wants. But if you throw in Max Clare, who's going to guard him? You can't guard him one-on-one with most of the guys in positions that might guard him, defend him. If you put 2 guys on Jeremiah Smith, you're probably leaving Inniss or Tate in a favorable situation, which is great for Julian Sand or even Keno's. Let's say, for sake of argument, we don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be. Whoever that quarterback is, they're going to figure out Jeremiah Smith's getting a lot of attention. Who is getting less attention? Carnell Tate. Okay, great. Let's try to get him the ball. And if you can't, Inniss is so good and maybe underrated to some people because he hasn't played a lot of ball, that in this scenario, he's going to flourish. Because Penn State always has good DBs. I'm not here to knock Penn State, say they don't have great players. They always have a good defense. They always have good DBs. They're physical guys, and they disrupt Ohio State's receivers all the time. I think this year, though, this is going to be one of the best trios plus tight ends combination that Ohio State's had a really long time. And I think when Ohio State and Penn State meet up, that's going to be one of the areas where Penn State is not able to even slow down Ohio State because those 4 guys are so good.
I want to make that argument in return because I think Penn State's defensive backs are at least comparatively the past 4 or 5 years. And that includes when Joey Porter Jr. was there and everything, because I think AJ Harris can be comparable to what Joey Porter Jr. gave them that season. But that's the thing, though. Ohio State, I don't think we've seen anybody like Jeremiah Smith. And that's something when there's Chris Olave or, I'm going to forget everybody in this conversation, Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr., et cetera. Jeremiah Smith he's going to be 1 or 2 in the NFL, in an NFL draft. Now, Marvin Harrison was top 5, right? But I'm saying that, for a fact, Harrison could have, been, well, maybe he's 5th. Maybe he ends up at the end of the top 10. For a fact that somebody's going to have to take Jeremiah Smith, kind of like the respect to Calvin Johnson. I put those two in the same conversation when we're talking about player profile, their potential, Hall of Fame. Okay. So yeah, Penn State, even with a first round caliber cornerback, is probably still going to have to double and roll coverages and just pay very close attention to Jeremiah Smith. And that's where the opportunities open up. I actually like Zach Wheatley in man-to-man against Max Clare. I'm not saying that, he'll shut him down. He'll take him out of the game. No, but maybe Max Clare won't win as many matchups as you would expect him to if Zach Wheatley and him are both playing in that game. That's going to be the pivotal matchup. Actually, yes. I'm glad you brought up Clare. Where I'm intrigued to see is who is that next wide receiver after Smith. Is it Ennis? Is it Tate? Because they haven't really emerged. They haven't really taken over games yet, as you would think for those Ohio State wide receiver prospects. I actually like Mylan Graham the best out of that as that second guy after Smith. So could it be Graham?
I don't think so. He has a burst unlike any receiver that Ohio State currently has. He during practice in the spring, then in the spring game, he had the ability to catch the ball and then once his foot planted after catching the ball, he was straight upfield. And you're like, oh, no. That burst is one that he gets upfield so quickly. He's also a pretty good returner. So that's where that burst comes into play a lot on the field. I don't think it will be Graham. I still think he's probably the fifth receiver. Of the top, the next guy, if you're not looking at Tate or Ennis, is Bryson Rogers. Bryson Rogers is a guy who may be one of the better route runners at Ohio State. He says he is the best route runner in the country. And of course, I love the confidence. I know it's not true, but I love the confidence Bryson Rogers has of saying that he is one of the, saying he's the best route runner in the country. But I think his route running ability and being more of a possession receiver, he's a guy that on 3rd and 8, and let's say Ohio State does do the unthinkable and goes out with 4 receivers. They don't do that. They've never really done that. But I've been calling for that for 5 or 6 years. Just go out there 4 wide and let the thing sling it around.
Play to your strengths.
You need to. I think Bryson Rogers is a guy that in that scenario, you can rely on him in key situations, especially in big games. Yeah, he doesn't have the big game plays or big game reps, but I think this is the year for him to take that next step up and to make those big plays in big games as wide receiver 4 at Ohio State.
That's going to do it for this Locked On crossover. I can't wait for this matchup. I really can't wait for this game because it might be a 1 versus 2 by the time, and who knows? I'm not counting out Ohio State against Texas. I know that one's not a favorable one to start the season, but I think Penn State should be undefeated by the time they meet the Buckeyes. If the Buckeyes happen to have 1 loss, that's a top 5 matchup at a minimum. So we're here in May. Can't wait till that one rolls around in the fall. That's going to do it for this Locked On crossover. He's Jay Stephens of Locked On Buckeyes. I'm Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. Make sure you check out the all-new show, The Portal. It is Locked On's exclusive show devoted entirely to high school football recruiting, as well as the transfer portal, hosted by Brian Smith. Does an incredible job. That is The Portal. Again, be a part of the conversation. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Thank you so much for joining the show, and subscribe to both the channels and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest around the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions. Jay, thank you so much for the time. Great conversation, and we should definitely follow this up because there's plenty to we just scratched the surface of this matchup. So thank you.
I enjoyed it, Zach. Let's do it again.